There are so many habitat improvements you can make on your land for deer. And by the way, a lot of times those are really mixing well with the other wildlife on your property. Deer are creatures of edge. So when you're creating edge, you're creating diversity, which deer crave. You're creating a lot of habitat for other forms of wildlife, including small game and birds. But habitat improvements created in the wrong spot often do more harm than good. So when you're thinking about creating whitetail habitat improvements on your land, it could be bedding areas, water holes, travel corridors, food plots, native grass plantings, and even mock scrapes like this one right here, which is a real important one for us. You have to make sure that those improvements line up appropriately to move deer parallel to your borders, within your borders, and to keep deer consistently using your land for the entire hunting season. And if they're using those habitat improvements consistently in a defined order every single day during the daytime hours, you don't want them using at night because that doesn't do you any good either. But if they're moving through those habitat improvements during the daylight, then you can build a herd through that because you know where those deer are, you know where they're contained during the daylight hours, and then you can hunt that herd. And so it's very important. We have a bedding area right over here. We have a travel corridor right here. We have this mock scrape right here. And then we have travel all the way down to the food plots down below. And as long as those food plots stay consistent in the quality and diversity of food for the entire hunting season, as long as we don't spook out those food plots, we don't spook out the movement in between, we don't spook out this mock scrape, that bedding area, that travel corridor, and we even have a water hole over here, then we can develop a system of hunting here that we can count on for the entire hunting season. When we can count on that movement during the daylight for the entire hunting season, then we can hold bucks within this movement. We can protect those bucks. We can try to advance them to the next age class. We can improve buck age structure. We can improve sex ratios. And if we need to take out a couple does, whether it's on that food source down there or maybe some late season doe hunting up here in December, then that deer herd that's moving within these defined movements every single day, pretty easy to maintain that population if we need to practice a little trigger control or use and raise or lower the deer population through doe harvest. So very important concept. We have a tree stand that relates to this movement over here. We have one right down here, and then there's a one right up behind me. We make any holes in this movement, food source down there, travel corridors, bedding area, meaning that we spook out these and we get rid of the deer that are in here, we're gonna lose that movement. And if we lose that movement, we not only lose our ability to manage this herd and manage a daytime herd on this property, because a lot of times if we're losing that movement, they'll still use this movement. It's going to be after dark though. So we don't want to create a nocturnal herd, but if we lose the ability to manage this movement, then we lose our ability to hunt it effectively too. It doesn't matter if that's at the food plot down there or any piece in here, it has to remain intact. And that's why creating whitetail habitat improvements just on any leftover space on your property is not generally a great idea. It doesn't matter if this is a nice open field with great soil and you can put a food plot over here. If you're going to spook deer and you're inviting deer to your access or departure every time you come in to hunt a tree stand, then it's not a good location for that food plot. The same with a water hole. You might have a great knoll for a bedding area that you have to pass every time you go on and off your property. Not a great spot for a bedding area, even if it has the great conditions to create that bedding area. So think about that. Very important that if you're creating habitat improvements, you're not creating random habitat improvements. You're putting those improvements together in a cohesive movement. That cohesive movement during the daylight hours allows you to manage that herd, promote that herd to the next age class, to better that herd, to improve the sex ratios, to maintain populations when needed, but also allows you to have a great hunt. So make sure that your habitat improvements not only line up, that they're consistent throughout the entire year, and your ability to manage a herd and have a great hunt is outstanding. And I believe that keeping that and maintaining that for the entire season is something that a lot of hunters don't really get to experience. They don't get to experience these dependable stands. And when you think about it, we have these three stands up here that rely on this movement. We have a stand over here that we're adding that relies on this movement. We have two stands over here in between. We have stands around and close to the food source down below. So this entire movement that spans over 500 yards, and it actually attaches to the neighbors' bedding areas too, is something that supports 8, 9, 10 stands. We rely on this type of movement right here, and it's only on 30 acres of cover. It's something you can apply even to small parcels, and I encourage you to think about where you're placing your next whitetail habitat improvement this spring, this summer, and going into this fall.